Hello everybody, Testtubegamer again with a gameplay for Taito. Today I wanted to talk about the characters in the game, mechanics in the game, things I consider to be unfair and fair gameplay, and like what I would like for them to be addressed, and things like that. So I'm going to start off by saying the tier lists of the characters that I've played and seen played the most. These are all opinions, but I feel like most of it's not completely unfounded. We'll go through it, and you guys can tell me what you think individually, but I'll go start with characters that I think are fair but weak. Voden, Uncle Sven, Ashlyn, and Charnock. Or Charnock. I think each of those characters fulfill a role decently enough, but are not particularly strong at any one given talent, you know? Like Charnock is good DPS, but I don't think he's stronger or as good as like a Beckett or as an HK. But you can still pick him, and he does his job okay, right? Voden, he can heal, he can supply supplemental DPS, things like that. But I would never pick him over an HK or something like that. Or as far as healing, like you would never want him to be the main healer. Although if you do spec into his healing talents, he actually does keep teams up surprisingly well. But I don't know. You would just normally pick an actual healer. So anyway, Aisling, she's really hard for me to talk about because I don't have a whole lot of time on her. But she does. I don't consider her to be overpowered ever at all. But she does do her job, which is disruption. Kador absorbs a lot of damage, you know, people focus him down. If he builds whatever the barrier talent is, you know, he can stop all incoming DPS from ranged champions and things like that. Strong character, but not stronger than what I would consider to be the other melees. So those are my weak but fair characters. So now the fair characters that are strong. And by fair, what I mean is they are overbearing with their strengths, but they do have like gameplay that means they have to you have to land your shots in order to be effective with those characters. You have to pull something off to be effective with that character, not just you get free damage and no one can do anything about it. So fair but strong, I would say Beckett is number one. She's strongest, I think, champ in the game. But she's fair. Like, if you can get her rocket jump out of her and, bait that out of her and surround her with any amount of people, she goes down really quickly. She's fairly squishy. And her damage, it's all skill shots, her rockets and stuff like that. Her pistols do a lot of damage, but you have to be up close to use them, so it's a give and take, right? HK, he's number 2 on the list for strong, but I would say fair because he's so immobile. Now he's tanky as all get out, so you have to devote quite a bit of damage to take him down, but he's pretty immobile, and so if you can surround him, he's worse than Beckett because he doesn't even have an out. He just has effective HP in the form of shields and stuff like that. But still unbelievably strong. Oh, if he can hold down, if you get a hold of a particular neutral point, like in this map in particular, and get him embedded where you've got support from your teammates to keep people out, but he still mows people down as they come in. Oh my god, he's so strong, if not the strongest character in the game because of that. You have to work around it, and you have to do strategies to overcome that, but that's why I consider him to be a fair character. There are strategies you can do to play against what he does. So next on the list for fair characters but strong is Margrave. Margrave, I don't play at all. I don't really like tanks, but it's very obvious. His disruption is really, really strong, and his deflection and the shields and all that, very strong. And he does good damage, I think, once he gets in there. I don't have a lot to say about him. I don't really know. Basically, he's just a huge walking target, and the thing is he has so much HP he can tank for days. So very, very good character, but I would consider fair. I don't consider him to be an immovable object, just a very strong one. So not much more to say about that. Nasus next on the list because he's fair, or well, on the fair, but you know, strong. He does so much damage that it's just you do not want to duel him. If he has cooldowns up, you do not want to duel this character unless you can kite every one of his abilities, you know, effectively. Probably the highest DPS in the game, is that correct? I'm not sure, but very, very strong. And then once he gets his talents going, and once he starts getting kills and you know, all the seeing red and all that stuff, he just deals so much damage. But he's melee, and you know his skill shots only cause slows and things like that. So if you can kite him, he's gonna die. So I would say strong but fair. And then last on the strong but fair characters is Taito. Taito damage is very difficult to land, and you have to put yourself out there to land it. So if the opposing team can lock a Taito down, he goes down in an instant. He goes down so quick. If he's able to run rampant and get in the back lines and assassinate characters quickly, oh, he's unstoppable, so strong. But there is counterplay to what he does. Very hard to track him down. I mean, he's got so many outs and things like that, especially if you spec into swoop to loop and all that. Makes him hard to lock down, but I don't consider him to be unfair. He does a lot. He does a lot of damage and stuff like that, but not unfair. So now, unfair characters. There's the weak, unfair characters, and then there's the strong ones, so let's go through that. We got, for weak, the list is pretty small. Oru, now, this is, you're gonna, I have to defend myself on this, because the character's brand new and stuff like that, so people are gonna think I'm crazy for calling him overpowered. That's not what this means. I don't think he's overpowered, I think he's unfair. So he has tracking on his kit, so all his cards that don't hit very hard, they track you. So when you are 1v1ing him in a scenario where everyone else died and stuff like that, if you have less HP than he does, there's really no outplaying him other than running away. Those are scenarios where like maybe he should win because of his kit, but when an entire team of like maybe like 15 to 20% HP players can be wiped out with a single ultimate, I'm not okay with that. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's well earned. I don't think that it's particularly difficult to pull off. The scenario has to come up, right, where you have 4 or 5 characters that are all low, right? Like that has to happen for the Oru, and it's kind of like the stars aligning, and so by that sense, you know, it's like, well, that doesn't happen very often, don't worry about it. But that doesn't mean it should be allowed. That should be the case, right? Oru flies in the air, deals a few cards, and does up to, I mean, as far as I've seen, now this is all personal anecdotes, but I've seen him do 750 damage for one card, you know what I mean? So like my character was just at that threshold for the execute, and he killed him at 750 HP. And if you hit 4 characters at that threshold, it's just insane. Like that's not fair. I don't think that's fair. No one should be able to do that, or at least it should be far more difficult to pull it off, because it's not hard at all to do that. That ult is very easy to aim. You do put yourself in harm's way by, you know, going into the air or whatever, but if there's no range to shoot you down, you're just up there doing free damage. So what I would like is the threshold to be higher. Maybe he has to hit more cards on a target, you know what I mean, for it to do the main damage part of it. Like HK's ultimate is pretty difficult to land all the shots. Once you do, it does insane damage. But it's pretty difficult to get in that scenario where you get every rocket onto the character and they don't dodge out of it and things like that. But even if every single rocket lands, I think it does, what, like 500 damage or something like that? And which is decent. It's definitely a good nuke, but so all the rockets from HK landing as opposed to one card from Oru landing, it's just, I don't like that. That's why I consider it to be an unfair thing. The rest of his kit is actually kind of weak, which is why I consider him to be a weak but unfair character. I don't think he's over there ruining teams. It's not broken in the sense that he's ruining the game or anything like that. I just consider it to be an unfair character. ability. So that's it for that guy. And then next would be Griselma. Griselma is a weak but unfair character in the sense that once she puts her hand, if you do Granny Slap, whatever it's called, build, and you put your hands down, you can lock down entire segments of the game. You can kill creatures not taking any damage whatsoever, and you can keep them up forever, and then they take creatures down insanely quickly. There might be counterplay to this by just killing Griselma, but it depends largely on how she does it. It creates scenarios where she's the only character that can do it, and there's not a good reason why she can do it. So anyway, still, I consider I don't want to nerf Griselma. That's not at all. I just consider that needs to be looked at in some way. I don't know how. I'm not a programmer or anything like that, or a design artist. But the idea is that stuff like that needs to get looked at for the overall health of the game. And what's funny is not even that many people know about that build. Nobody even really plays Griselma. It's not like it's an outcry of Griselma players just destroying the whole game or anything like that. It's just so that it exists. But anyway, okay, so that, like I said, that list is very short. For unfair characters that are strong, I don't think anyone will debate me on this. Trip. She's got pretty much everything that an assassin could possibly need in a kit to be effective, except that they went ahead and no reason whatsoever gave her all the damage in the world. Like, she just does unimaginable amounts of damage with her LMB for no reason. Like, I mean, it's just a little girl with some daggers, but she can out DPS everyone in the game? Is that... I don't know. I don't actually know the DPS numbers, unfortunately. I just know that what it takes to get her ramped up as opposed to all the other people. The other people have wind up to their damage, right? Like, Taito has bleeds that he needs to get going for, you know what I'm saying? Wu has to land a lot of abilities and do combos, which are very, very, I wouldn't say hard to pull off, but you can dodge out of it. If he misses the tongue, you know, that's a big requisite for most of his damage to come out. Taito, oh, I'm sorry, I went over Taito. Trip, all you do is hold LMB, and then her multiplier goes up, and so she just starts doing crazy crit damage and all that stuff. And then you couple in the abilities, her knock-up ability, her Q, the electric slide, it will do 500 damage just because, and then you have an ability to make it always crit. So that's so unnecessarily strong. I don't understand why she has a 500 damage nuke in her kit with no build-up. And it's a mobility, it's an escape, name what you want it to do, it does it. It knocks people up. I mean, it's a CC, it's a damage nuke, it's a mobility. Does it need anything else? Good God. So she's too strong for no real reason. Like, there's no reason for her kit. It's not hard to land that stuff. Q is way easier to land than Taito's RMB, his swoop or whatever it's called. So anyway, that's the point. So Trip just needs, realistically, I think damage reduction. I think her abilities might need looked at. I'm not entirely sure. There's just too much in that kit. It's overloaded. So anyway, alright, Mozu. Mozu is insanely strong, and nobody even talks about Mozu. It's kind of interesting. I guess because her damage has wind up. You know, with the wands, once they get going, then she starts pushing out the DPS. But the thing is, she has abilities or perks that when she specs into it, she can have instant build up to her damage, and then she has other spec into perks where she can reduce the cooldowns for all her other spells, and it becomes this thing where she's, if you dive into her to kill, you know, specifically her, you have to put yourself in a lot of people's eyes or line of sight. Like, if you go for her in the back, you have to go through her 4 teammates or whatever, right? And whatever it is that they're doing. And then she has an escape ability, so she can play on the fringe, you know, in the back, and then lock down entire areas. And this is where her biggest problem is that she has her teleport, I'm sorry, not teleport, her gate or whatever that's called, that can completely cut off ranged damage, right? Completely remove damage from the equation for very long periods of time, which she can put up 2 times. And then it's all auto-aim stuff too. You can spec into where your damage just automatically aims for you. And it's like, oh my god, what is the downside to this character? She's very squishy, and then if you do jump on her, she can die very quickly. But you have to devote a lot of resources, and like I said, the unfair part is that you're cutting out ranged from the equation in this. It's only melees that jump on her that can do the damage, because she can just hide in her gate to completely negate all ranged damage. It becomes unfair. The reason that Mozu sticks out so much to me is because she reminds me a lot of D.Va. I know these are 2 totally different games, but the mechanics are largely the same. Thank God D.Va's stupid-ass defense matrix doesn't reflect the damage, because then I would never play Overwatch ever again if that was the case. But you do, in this game, you reflect the damage back to people for a long period of time, and it just cuts out so much DPS from the other characters all around, and then reflects it too. It's just, I don't like mechanics like that. I would be willing to accept if she could put up 1 gate at a time, but you can use her blink to put up another gate, you know, relatively quickly, and just cut down entire teams' damage for, you know, 14 seconds at a time, which is such an insane amount of time when you can, you know, consider the team fight nature of the game. Entire teams can lose in half that amount of time, so 14 seconds is crazy to have a gate that completely negates half your team's damage and then reflects it, you know, if they do shoot into it. So it just needs to be looked at, is all I would say. I don't consider Mozu to be overbearingly strong, just unfair. I don't consider that to be a fair mechanic, so it needs to be looked at. So I'm going to switch to gameplays. This is some HK gameplay just because I ran out of footage of the match, but I want to cover these last couple characters for the unfair but strong. So let's see, Mozu. Okay, I don't have enough time on him, but Wu really needs to be looked at. I know he's a buggy mess, and there's a lot of problems with his kit, you know, that don't work properly, this, that, and the other, but he can 100 to 0 a lot of people with 1 combo, and it's kind of crazy. Plus his mobility is pretty broken. I don't know. I don't want to talk about Wu too much because I don't know enough about him, so you guys can tell me what you think about Wu, because I don't have any clue. I just notice when a good Wu is on either team, the opposing team really hates their lives. Like, they just get shit on. So I just consider him, I don't even want to say unfair. Maybe I should not talk about Wu at all. So I'm going to strike him from the list because I don't know enough about him. But now there's a character I do know a little bit about, is Ramsey. I don't consider these characters to be overbearingly strong. I consider them to be unfair to play against in the circumstances that they provide in a match. So Ramsey has an LMB dodge build or R&B dodge build, where you can pretty much keep iframing everything your opponent does, because you have dodge, and then you have stamina for dodge, and then his R&B generates stamina if you spec into it, and you can just stay up for so very long that it becomes almost ridiculous what he can do to entire enemy melee teams. So like the opposite of Mozu is Ramsey. Ideally, if you had a Mozu and a Ramsey, you could do this, you know, you could have them lock down their respective, you know, counterparts, all the melees and all the range. You know, you could work off each other. But anyway, the character, it's not hard to pull off Ramsey's little shtick of dodging and then meleeing a couple times and then R&Bing and then it interrupts what they're doing. His R&B interrupts whatever you're trying to do and stuff like that. So it's not fun to play against, it's not hard to pull off, and the bang for the buck is that you have a character that can stay inside enemy lines for such a long time, doing really good damage. His damage numbers are not overbearingly high, but they're very, very good. I don't consider the character to be overpowered, I consider the ability to do these things to be overpowered. He is susceptible to ranged characters, and you know they can whack him down really quickly. His health pools are lower than a tank and things like that, but the dodge and the iframes to a melee is a nightmare. It's just, you can't fight him. You should not fight him. You have to... Basically, as a ranged character, I completely avoid Mozu. And as a melee character, I completely avoid Ramsey. And that's not healthy. That's not... There's no counterplay to them in those scenarios, right? So that's not healthy gameplay, and it needs to be looked at, in my opinion. I'm sure I'm gonna get a lot of hate, and you know, people are like, you're retarded and you're bad and this and that and the other, and I agree with those things. I am retarded at this game and I am bad at this game, but I'm trying to learn. And these are some of the things that stuck out to me, and I would like for the discussion to at least be raised, because nobody even talks about Mozu. People talked about Ramsey a little bit, and he did get hit with a nerf stick a little bit, but it's still there. As a melee, he's still completely one-sided fights. There's not a whole lot you can do unless you catch him out of stamina and all this stuff. But anyway, those are my thoughts. I would like for civil discussion. I'm sure I will get all of that, because when I brought up battle rate and why it was failing, people were super... Everybody had just tons and tons of positive feedback about what's wrong with the game, and it mostly had to do with that you can't compare League of Legends to Battlerite. So, I mean, that one thought was echoed at least 20 times. But anyway, that's it for me, guys. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and see you in the next one.